This is the Planeteers podcast. Stories of women who are doing the work, restoring what's broken, protecting what still holds, and showing us that change is still possible. I'm Beth Bannerman. Each week, I talk with scientists, leaders, and doers, women who are shaping the future with courage, creativity, and grit. The damage is real, so is their courage to heal it. Welcome to the Planeteers podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bannerman. Today, we uplift the voice of Dr. Sabrina McCormick, a social scientist, filmmaker, and entrepreneur whose work spans 55-plus peer-reviewed studies, Emmy-winning television, feature films in the Amazon, and groundbreaking audience impact research. Over the next hour, we'll explore how her childhood trauma became her life's mission, how she is pushing boundaries in Hollywood, New York, and around the world to broadcast scientific nuance in creative ways, what exciting projects she's working on now, and why measuring impact matters as much as telling the story. But first, given her extraordinary career, I want to take a minute or two to tell you more about her. Dr. Sabrina McCormick brings over 20 years of deep expertise spanning social science, filmmaking, and entrepreneurship. As founding CEO of Resilience Creative, she spearheads the creation of powerful climate content designed to engage broad audiences, leveraging both her research background and her filmmaking acumen. Her academic credentials include more than 55 peer-reviewed articles and 2 books published in Science, Nature, Climate Change, and similar journals. Sabrina's work has shaped early understanding of climate litigation, the health risks of extreme heat, energy democracy in the Brazilian Amazon, and the social dynamics needed to mobilize climate action. She co-led the largest audience impact study on climate media to date and served as a lead author on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's special assessment of extreme events. Supported by grants from many organizations, including the National Science Foundation, CDC, and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, her research contributions extend to service on the National Academy's Climate Communication Initiative. During the Obama administration, she was an American Association for Advancement of Science, Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the EPA and Council on Environmental Quality, later advising on the White House Special Report on Climate Change and Health. She has reviewed and guided programming for major philanthropic organizations worldwide. In television and film, Sabrina was a producer on the Emmy-winning series Years of Living Dangerously, crafting episodes starring Matt Damon and Michael C. Hall. She has produced and co-directed other films, and her latest, Burnout, is making rounds at international festivals. An entrepreneur at heart, she founded Pandemic Proof Productions and Aclara Advanced Materials, securing patents for inventions in 6 global territories. Her academic roles have included tenured associate professor at George Washington University, senior fellow at Penn's Wharton Risk Center, visiting scholar at Columbia's Sabin Center for Climate Law, and fellow at Woodrow Wilson Center. Through science, story, and strategic innovation, Sabrina consistently drives tangible progress on the climate crisis. Sabrina, oh my goodness, what an extraordinary career. Welcome to the Planeteers podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. When you go over it like that, I'm like, no wonder I need the weekend off. I'll just go to sleep early tonight.
Yeah. I think it's a personal thing. This podcast is uplifting women who are doing extraordinary work. And I don't want to gloss over, the body of work and the impact that you've had throughout your career. It's really inspiring to those of us who are working and those of us who are in school looking to have careers in the future. You and I first met each other. We participate in the Samudra Group. And the Samudra Group brings together an expansive ecosystem of visionary leaders, board members, strategists, artists, activists, authors, etc. And they are inspired. We are inspired to make change. And there was a call that you and I were on, and you were making some salient points, as you do, on the importance of
shooting my mouth off about something.
Yes, and I love it, which was the commercial viability of environmental ideas. You were bringing the group back down to kind of brass tacks because once again you were demonstrating you have a real connection to people who are on the ground running businesses, running organizations. And, you are able to connect the dreamers and the doers. And the comments that you were making actually were around the impact and the opportunity that we have with AI. And immediately after that, I wrote you a letter on email and I said, oh my gosh, I was so impressed with your comments. And I told you about my podcast. And from day one, Sabrina, you have been so supportive of what I was working on. So I just want to say thank you. And this is just like a full circle moment for me, for you to be here with us.
Well, I'm so glad that it has come full circle, because when you were telling me about your idea, I was like, you know what? This is great. Please do it. Please. I can't wait to see it come to fruition, and here it has. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's so exciting for me to have someone like you join our podcast, because you are sitting at the intersection of so much: research and science, strategy and policy, entrepreneurship, and filmmaking. So each of these areas on their own are powerful levels of driving change, as you know, and kind of behavioral change as well as policy change. And it shapes how we live and connect and care for each other and also the planet. We can learn a lot from you, from your work that you have done, the work you're doing, and also feel inspired by what you're working on. But I want to start in the beginning and go all the way back. So I mentioned childhood trauma. That's actually not a loose usage of that word. You've described losing your childhood home to toxic contamination. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened, and what did that 8-year-old you feel like when that was happening?
Yeah, so I grew up in Georgia, although I know you can't really hear, not so much in my accent anymore because I haven't lived there in a long time. And we ended up with powder post beetles in our house, which are a little bit like termites. And, you just get rid of them like termites. You spray some chemicals, which is what my mother did. And then, within a few days, weeks, there was a lot of smell, and she got a chunk of beam that she had tested, and it turned out that they had sprayed the house with chlordane. So this is a chemical that had been used to the tune of billions of tons of pounds on our agriculture in America up to this point, but had been outlawed when it was discovered that it was toxic to human health and well-being. And this company was just dumping off the remainder of what they had in our home. And because it was toxic, we moved out of the house and we never moved back in. And, we lost everything. The house was essentially considered a toxic waste dump. And, I took a doll with me. I was allowed to take one doll that we had dry cleaned that I still have now. And, we moved into a house that was like a rental house. My mother sued the company and was told to settle out of court for $80,000 for all of our belongings in the house. That was all we got, which was basically nothing, even at that time. And so I think I felt really super displaced. I felt like a tremendous sense of loss. And, when you're a kid, I was 8. I was not able to articulate these things or really understand the effect it would have on me and on my life. And it's taken, my whole life to really understand what that meant to me. And also, I think importantly, what it meant to my ability to be empathic with other people who have experienced other kinds of loss. And so when I think of, I've obviously worked on climate for a really long time, the people who have lost their homes to wildfires, to sea level rise and flooding, to all of these extreme weather impacts that we see exacerbated by climate change, I think I really do understand what they experience. And I do understand, the risk of what it means for other people who have not yet experienced that. And I think, over time, and this is a long time, it wasn't until probably really my late 20s that I felt, really indignant about what had happened and what had allowed it to happen. So, our policy being lax and the courts being lax, both two branches of government that did not protect me and my family and our health. And my mother became sick. I mean, this is real. Like, your mother's sick when you're 8, like that's everything to you, right? And so it really, I think, am I allowed to curse on this podcast? Really lit a fire under my ass. I mean, I don't know if I would feel this way otherwise, but that never stops for me. That sense of, the need for justice to really protect our daily lives, our health, which we often take for granted, right? Like, I feel fine, we'll just move on. But I think, I really feel always super motivated by that experience.
I'm glad you used the word justice because that is a really clear picture of injustice. And you can really feel the indignation and the righteous indignation, like you are validly feeling emotion there that that experience didn't need to exist if the systems were set up correctly to support you like you needed to be supported. I read that earlier in your career, you were researching the role of environmental factors in breast cancer, and you were doing some film work with the Rhode Island School of Design, and you realized at that time that documentaries can reach people who may not pick up a book, so reaching more people beyond the book audience. And you went on to release a film and a book called No Family History. Was it at the same time you were earning your PhD at Brown University in Rhode Island?
Yes. And, maybe this is a note for current students, or maybe this is a note for everybody. I totally did that under the radar. I mean, so I was doing my PhD at Brown, and I just didn't tell my professors that I was also taking classes at RISD in documentary filmmaking and making a film, because I knew they would tell me not to do it because I had to focus on my dissertation. And so I did that, and then I published my first book, which was an academic book. You have to, as a sociologist, you have to publish an academic book. I wrote at the same time that book about environmental causes of breast cancer called No Family History, and made that film. And I published those books almost at the same time, and it was a crossover book. It's about the story of how we discovered that breast cancer is caused by lots of different, what are generally called endocrine disrupting chemicals in the environment. And so, yeah, I totally did that on the sly and on the side at the same time. And I will just say again, for students, I did win the award for best dissertation in social sciences. So like, you can do both. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that like everyone's going to support you. Probably they won't. When you're doing innovative things, often you get more flack than support. But anyway, that is what I did. And I'm not sorry I did it. It really has launched my career as it has, turned it into what it's become.
Yeah. Is that when you realized that scientific data alone wasn't enough and that film could really amplify scientific truths?
Yeah, I mean, I think even at that time, I was frustrated by how I was so privileged to learn all of this. I had at Brown, as is true of many universities, I had access to all of this information and experts, and I was learning so much. And I would go to parties and people would say, well, what are you working on? And I would tell them, and they would, their eyes would get big, like, what do you mean there are environmental causes of breast cancer? And that, okay, we have to do something to reach beyond those people who are going to look up an academic article, and when I did launch and release that film, and we took it out to organizations in that field, screened it, and there is nothing like being a filmmaker and having an audience watch your film and learn. It's like students learning, like when you see, people's face that, oh, wow, I didn't know that affects me, that matters to me. There is like no other experience like it. It's so gratifying. Yeah. And I really think that film reached so many more people than any of the academic articles that I published. Not that science isn't important. Science is super important. There are different venues and different audiences and different goals for each thing. But yeah.
Being in a screening and watching someone watch your film and seeing them find themselves in that story is a unique experience to film. Having said that, there are millions of people who have been positively impacted by all of your scientific research. It's just that you weren't sitting next to them.
I wasn't sitting next to them. Like, let's read it together.
Okay, you have said that research is an essential part of your storytelling process to understand what has happened and what might happen in the future. How do you go about your research as part of your storytelling process?
It depends on the project. Most of my work, my film work, has emerged from some area of in-depth academic research that I've done. Not all of it, but most of it to date has. Sequestrata, for example, my first scripted feature film that we shot in the Brazilian Amazon came out of, gosh, at that point, was it 15 years of work in Brazil on energy in the Amazon, et cetera. Having said that, more recently, as I've launched Resilience Creative, we are working on developing projects that are not, how can I say it? They're not always specifically from, a decade of research. We are kind of starting to tell stories like Burnout doesn't really come from my academic research. And we can talk about that whenever you want. But mostly, and maybe this is just my personality, I'm like one of those people, I want to know all of my options before I make a decision. So, there are people, I think I'm not alone. I want to know
You're
everything
not
and then
allowed.
pick, I'm not like, oh, let's go with that. No, I want to know everything. And so that's also true of storytelling. So, for example, we have a documentary series that we're working on climate change lawsuits. And I've been working on that area of academic research for, oh gosh, I'm looking at the calendar. What year are we in? Like at least 15 years, right? So a long time.
Wow.
And have really, and because for me, what I have wanted to know is things that we, for example, answered in our Nature climate change paper, which is like, who's bringing these suits, who's winning, who's losing, in what area, why. And to me, that is like the rich nuance that you can bring to storytelling that brings it alive and makes it not just like, and I shouldn't poo-poo this, not just an emotionally engaging story. Obviously, all stories need to be emotionally engaging, but also something that can really articulate a path for social change in a way that is evidence-based. So it's a weird angle to take, to really want to know the evidence before I tell a story. And I don't know if I'm always, going to be able to do that, but it helps me feel like what I'm doing has a greater promise to being able to make change in the world. And especially because I've seen, and especially in the climate storytelling space, unfortunately, but in storytelling more generally, I've seen things have a backlash or a boomerang effect. Stories, films, documentaries, whatever. I've seen them do more harm than good because they're not done in a way where it's really thought through in terms of what will the outcome be for
Yeah.
those audiences watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes through in so many different aspects of your work where you are totally focused on the impact of the story or of the research. You have a very clear why, and you have a very clear now what. It seems built into the planning process. In April of 2010, 15 years ago, you filmed Gulf Coast residents responding to the BP Deep Horizon oil spill. Your goal was to understand how researchers could work with communities to create healthier environments. And you saw how often community activists and everyday organizers are marginalized, yet they play an important role in science and democracy. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? You made a film about it, if I'm correct, called After the Cap. I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that work.
Yeah. So one of my areas of, intersecting two areas of research that intersected in that project are my work on extreme events. Essentially, low probability, high risk events, like I was working on with some collaborators at Wharton, and citizen science. So obviously, we all remember the Deepwater Horizon spill. My collaborator and I, Ben Kalina, we were the first ones to land, first filmmakers to land on the ground in that area after the workers were released from their gag order from BP. So I didn't even know until we got there that BP had gagged all of its workers. I don't remember how many months. We got a National Science Foundation, what's called a RAPID grant. The RAPID grant mechanism is a fast turnaround time research, or it was, I don't know if it's still around now, but NSF would release funds quickly so that you could do research in an environment with rapidly changing conditions, often kind of events like this. So I was researching and we were documenting with our filmmaking process how citizens on the ground were collecting real-time data about the risks of the exposure to the oil. And so these workers were out in the water cleaning. They were literally driving their boat. It was nuts. They were it was so crazy. They were told by BP to drive their boats through the oil slick to break it up so it would fall into the water.
Oh my gosh.
So they're inhaling this, and then
Oh
they're
my
going
gosh.
home and they're eating the seafood that's out of the area that's contaminated. And they're, at that time selling it, not selling it, whatever the changing mandates were. And so we were interviewing them, and then we were working with a local organization called the Louisiana Bucket Brigade. That the bucket brigades capture real-time air monitoring data with a bucket, just a very retrofitted, very kind of low-tech instrument. And they were doing, and look, this is 2010, so it's really a different landscape now, but they were doing crowdsourced citizen science data about different exposures. And they were just capturing things that the agencies weren't. The agencies aren't that nimble. They also aren't doing a lot of citizen science generally. And, my work has always prioritized and put on the front, just put forward the real lived experience of whatever the issue, the environmental hazard is, and to take those people's experience and say, actually, are we missing this? Should we take a closer look at this? What does this say that standard science doesn't tell us? And so that's what we were doing with that project. And we made this interactive documentary. So it was a series of shorts following different characters doing that work in the Bayou.
Fascinating. So you got a grant from the National Science Foundation to essentially compare crowdsourced data that local residents were uploading to a database.
Yeah.
And you were comparing that to traditional risk assessment, basically. Essentially.
Yeah.
And so I've heard of citizen journalism. I've not heard of citizen science before. So this is a learning for me. So what did you find? What was your finding? Was it complementary? Was it completely contradictory? Was it helpful?
I would say that the citizen science was simply a deeper dive. I think we basically, or I should say the citizens on the ground, were capturing some exposures that were not being captured, and the magnitude of those exposures that were not being captured by government data collection. So I'll just give you the example of exposure to oil in the food system. So in the seafood they were eating, because like these communities, this is what they live off of, right? They fish it, they eat it.
That's right.
And we found, for example, that the survey instrument, so the questions being used to ask these fisher communities about how much they were exposed to, was just designed incorrectly. They had this, I can't remember the exact numbers, but basically they had no sense of how many servings per day people were eating from the bayou. And so we were gathering that people were eating it kind of like all day, every day, basically. And the government, and I want to say it was FDA, but now I'm not sure if it was another agency, just didn't capture that. And so we were seeing a much greater risk to communities than was actually being captured, essentially.
Wow, that is fascinating. So what challenge, academic, personal, or institutional, has almost stopped you or got in your way, or either almost or may have diverted you from pursuing your path? I'm sensing, let me just jump ahead here, that nothing was going to stop you from continuing your career in this area. But were there times where you felt like folks were getting in your way, or there were other challenges?
Yeah, I mean, my dad always says there are 3 keys to success. persistence, persistence, and persistence. And he's right. I mean, I take that very seriously. I'm very persistent. Having said that, for me, it's not about quitting. Unfortunately, I'm very bad at quitting. I do think there's a role for quitting. And I have quit. I did quit my academic job 2 years ago, and that was the hardest professional decision I've ever made. Hard for me to quit something. So it's most about being strategic and finding the way forward. I think yeah, I don't know how to put this exactly, but I think the hardest thing has been that often I'm like, my ideas are a little like out of the box, and they're not, I can't convince the hardest part is convincing people that they're viable. And, funders, especially large funders, are not big risk takers. And so finding those people who are able to see innovation that's viable, I think that is the hardest thing for me. Like getting a large institution that's well trusted to say to me, yeah, I don't know. They never say no, really, actually. They're just like, I don't really understand how to do that. Like that's really, I think that's one of my biggest challenges, and just figuring out how to bring on the support that will get the thing, whatever it is, off the ground.
I think a lot of people can relate to that on different levels. I mean, obviously, your work is saving lives, whether it's storytelling in film or it's research, or it's the public speaking, it's the inspiration, the policy kind of strategy that you're influencing around the world. And yet you still feel challenges. You still are, like you just described, looking for a fundraiser, or you're looking for funds to support your work. And it's hard to convince some people. And yet we see on the news all the time of kind of extravagant spending from multi-billionaires on things that don't have an impact on people's lives in such a direct way that your work has. And so I was just wondering, can you tell us about a time that your resolve was tested when you had a really good idea and you didn't have the funding for it? How did you persist, as your dad would advise you to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, to be frank, like I think the example that's most salient to me is what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build essentially a studio that makes climate stories that guide our way through this situation we've created for ourselves. And it's a novel idea. People think climate storytelling is boring and bad. I don't blame them. So it's kind of an unorthodox, like, why would I get behind that? How do I keep going? I mean, I did really learn from, some of my work during the pandemic, especially, but also all these years, that I have to find ways and make them integral to my life to support myself and my own well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And I have also learned that doing that is actually aligned with the larger goal. That I used to think I could just kind of go and just keep going, and I did for a long time. And now I feel like I'm trying to. It's a weird kind of transition in my life to go from that to, okay, how can I work with the forces of the universe, and with my own authenticity that align with that, rather than like forcing things to happen. And it's like every day is a different moment in that kind of calculus, strategy, way of thinking, way of like feeling through. Meditate, that's like very important to me.
Yeah.
I'm very careful about like what I expose myself to in terms of media, in terms of food. I'm super careful. I may be like a little crazy about it, but I think we're exposed to a lot of toxic things out there that we don't need to be. We don't have to do social media all the time, et cetera. I really don't like social media. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's an ongoing struggle.
Yeah, the more women I speak to who are doing extraordinary work, the more I am recognizing a pattern where there is a lot of kind of hard charging energy earlier on in their career, and then almost a maturity where it's a metaphor like the earth. We're all living systems, and so we need to work in balance, and we can't extract from ourselves resources that aren't there. We have to allow ourselves to replenish, which I think is really helpful. Is a really helpful insight to hear again and again from different people, because there is truth in that, personal truth, but also truth that we can witness. You mentioned earlier that a couple years ago you stepped away from a role, and I'm just wondering, lots of folks, whether it was through the pandemic or post-pandemic, have also thought about, how are they spending their time and pivoting away from one thing toward something else. And I'm just wondering, how did you make that brave decision to kind of declare that you're going to be going in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, that was that took a lot of different, I don't know, it's a very involved decision. I think, maybe not different from a lot of people during the pandemic. I really did very different work during the pandemic. I started 2 companies. Every film is a company. So I'd started film company,
Yeah.
just before, but I started 2 companies, and that was insane. I learned so much. And I, also I was doing my academic job at the same time, and I think I really started to think about, like, what do I want to spend my life doing? This is my life. I've got one. That's my philosophy. That's my belief. I've won. And for myself, for the world, and I started thinking about choices and how the way you allocate your time is a choice. And if I was allocating my time towards, whatever, doing the various things I was doing in academia, I had tried, I could not actually build this new thing that I wanted to build, that I'd been thinking about
Yeah.
for a decade. I had been talking about an entity like Resilience Creative for 10 years with investors, socializing this idea for so many years. And the reactions were changing over time. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't know if it's time in the world, but it's time for me to do this.
Yeah.
And it was kind of crazy in the sense, like, I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but also at a point you got to just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You are an extraordinary force for good, Sabrina. You're fighting the good fight on so many fronts, but you're like the rest of us. You feel climate anxiety too, and you get that burnout from hard work is real. So tell us a little bit about your latest film, Burnout, and how it connects to you personally.
Yeah, so I made this short film. I made it, I guess about a year and a half ago. And I made it after I was just saying I had started these 2 companies, and I did too much. And also, I think people working in the climate space don't have a great kind of sense of perspective on the hardship of facing a constant influx of information about, we've really created quite a difficult situations for ourselves in the world with climate change. And it's a lot, right? And so I think I got really burnt out. I mean, I just didn't even know that existed. Like, I don't think I'd even really thought about the concept before. I have a lot of energy. I do a lot of things. I have a huge bandwidth to manage a lot of stuff at once. Like, it's kind of crazy. And then I got burnt out, and I just, like, my energy, my productivity, my ability to manage, like, lots of tasks, all of this just kind of, like, really took a nosedive. And that's when I made that film. So I co-wrote it with my co-writer Roma Murphy, and and released it to the film festival market, and it's really become a concept for a TV series now that we're developing, which is centered around dance therapy and the role of dance therapy, and exploring the emotions and the trauma and the what we hold in our physical bodies that can help us. I actually really think, because I did dance therapy, the whole film is inspired by my personal experience, and I really think there's so much that we ignore in our bodies. And if we tune into what's there, which is what the experience of burnout forced me to do, right? Like I was like, I'm into making it happen. And then, like I was. And then I was so tired. I was like, okay, I have no choice but to pay attention to the fact that I am exhausted. And it's not just exhausted. I am also ignoring myself and my own needs and my own, really, I think, authentic mission in my life. I've got to turn my attention to that. So that's what that film is about. And it's so interesting to take it to festivals and other venues and have people react to it and say, I I hear you, I feel you, like I feel similarly. And especially I think for me it's gratifying to have people in the climate space say, oh my God, yes, exactly, so that's been an interesting journey. It's not one I ever expected to be engaged in.
So most people, when they're feeling burnout, they kind of slow down their productivity. But for you, making the film wasn't a ramping up of productivity as much as it was a cathartic experience, kind of like to be creative and express yourself and be artful about, the journey that you were on. And then I think to have the extra delight of people connecting with you and having that, your story resonate with them must be super powerful right now, because you're making the rounds, right? You're going to various festivals. Where can people see the film today?
Well, nowhere right now.
Coming to a city near you. Okay.
We'll put it somewhere. Yeah. So sorry, just take a beat on it and then we'll get it out there somewhere. But there's actually not a great distribution venue for short films. It's such a miss.
But people could people write you a letter and request a screening?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. They can contact us through the Resilience Creative website and we can schedule something.
I mean, I was so impressed. You were kind enough to share kind of an advance viewing with me. And so first of all, guys, you've got to watch this film. You got to figure out how to get to this film, because it is, how long is it? 16 minutes, 12 minutes? What is
it? Something like that.
Oh my gosh. It sticks with you. It is one of these things. It is somehow you figured out how to tell a transformational story. The protagonist, the main character, Lorna, is that her name, Lorna? Okay. So from the beginning to the end, we have a full story in just a few minutes where that you have this spectrum of emotions that we all feel. And you not only identify with the emotions immediately and quickly, just through the behaviors and just a little bit of script. So it's not like you're spoon-fed. This is how the character is supposed to be feeling. It's like you just get it right away just by facial expressions and the dynamic. And you not only experience the emotions of the main character, but you experience the emotions that come up inside the main character. You experience the emotions that come up inside the main character that are brought on by external people. So when we have, her boss coming in, or even you who play the dance therapist instructor, which is amazing, by the way.
Hilarious.
And you're dropping these truth bombs and these wise nuggets, There was a point in there where she says, I'm this is all I know. And you said, this is all you know right now. And what would you like to know? And I was like, what? This is crazy. I gotta watch that again. This is a journal prompt. There was just so much richness in that. Just the whole storytelling. Just bumped my mic. I'm too excited. There was so much emotion in that story. And then there was humor. And then the way that you used music to kind of signal to us that we can have fun with this. We can accept this. There is absurdity in this world, and it had that, I don't know, it just had such a great, witty, clever approach. And to do that in such a short amount of time was just really, really talented. Like everything that like the work that you've done before in terms of seeing things from different perspectives, being empathetic with audiences, having scientific nuance brought into the story. You have the book All We Can Save that is on her desktop. You've got climate books around her. Like just everything was so thoughtful. I was really impressed. So I'm a huge fan, guys. If you can't tell, go see the film. Go figure out how you can go see this film. It's amazing.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I guess what I didn't anticipate was that the film would start this kind of dialogue about, what we're doing to take care of ourselves and each other in this process, right? So I'm so glad that there was a journal prompt there for you, and that Kim is the character, right? Like, God, talk about playing your own therapist. Aren't you supposed to be your own therapist, right? I didn't plan on playing the therapist role. That just kind of like happened. But yeah, I mean, I love being present for people experiencing it and hearing their reactions, and seeing it motivate a kind of a self-reflection for people so that they can take care of themselves more.
Yeah, I mean, and even with your character as the dance therapy instructor, we had a 360-degree understanding of you as your own character development. You yourself were using your own therapy. You had your own kind of opportunity to share that you weren't separate from the client or the patient that you were helping. It was just so cool. It was just such a smart film. Really good. I really loved it. Well, we all face important decision points in our life. You've talked about a few. And I was wondering if there was any point, even in making the film, or where you felt like, I don't think I can continue the work, or was it an immediate switch from I'm feeling burnout to how do I channel this feeling into something that's helpful for me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember exactly how I felt at that point, other than like very low energy. I don't know. I think I'm very motivated by my relationships with other people, and the foundation that had funded that as a part of a larger project. I am very appreciative of and committed to, and I felt like, okay, what can I do that's good, because they have done so much for me. And so I didn't feel like I wanted to give up. It was more kind of like, what can I accomplish that is right for me in this moment and the world in this moment. And I don't know, I really love this book, The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Do you know this book?
Yeah, I love this book.
Love this book, right? And he has this point he makes, or at least I think about it this way, of like, a project comes to fruition if you're in the flow of things at a particular time in the world for you, that it's meant to be, and you should finish it, do it and finish it. And there's something really powerful about that for the rest of your process and your other projects. And so that project was just right for that moment for me. And I had to to make it and finish it. And I'm not going to say that it's like, whatever, it's 12 minutes, right? It's not a huge thing. But I did learn a lot I learned a lot from being in it, because I've never been in something before. I'm not an actor. It was fascinating from a directorial perspective and from a storytelling perspective, like, to be inside the story. I just was like, I learned so much from that. And I think I wouldn't have if I hadn't like done it, finished it, really followed it through. And it's in the way that, I should really listen to myself, because it's so easy to get attached. Like, I wanted to cast so-and-so for the therapy role,
Yeah.
I didn't. And then I was in it and I learned so much, and that was great. And like, to just kind of not get so stuck on things. I gotta be like a dog with a bone, And so I don't know. I think I really did learn a lot, and was very valuable for me in my overall projects and process.
Yeah, put it out there. That's what Rick Rubin says. Put your art out there. You're not an artist until you put yourself out there. And I think that's fantastic. So, yeah, and I did read that one of your hobbies was reading screenplays because you like to imagine how the director might interpret the script. And so there you go. You just brought that to life.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. Yes.
You've worked with movie stars, world leaders. What is something that has shaped the way you think about life or your approach to work?
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, you worked on the Years of Living Dangerously. You've
Yeah.
worked, there's so much work that you've done with some amazing artists, but also world leaders and then the Nobel Prize summit that you're going to be going to. So, like, just the people that you connect with are just extraordinary.
They are. They are. It's true. I have been very blessed to work with, I mean, people work consistently with people who I think are the most talented people alive today, truly. I mean, it's really been, I'm quite honored to have been able to serve them, to collaborate with them, advise them, truly. And what have I learned? I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is when I built my first company, Pandemic Proof Productions. So what happened during the beginning of the pandemic was the film industry shut down, and it was re-upped when the studios and the unions came up with an agreement of how to make productions COVID safe. So I built this company to do so, and we were really the only company that was really applying the real-time science to sets, because I had put together this really batshit amazing scientific advisory board. But when I went to do that, my good friend and now resilience creative collaborator Tim Blake Nelson, who's also in my film, who, if you saw "Oh Brother Where Art Thou," is the third brother with Tartu, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, and he is he's such a good guy and so brilliant. He's a character actor, so you probably seen him in a million things. So Tim and I were talking about this company and what I was doing, and he said, "Look, Sabrina, just whatever you do, just do your best at that job. Like, don't get distracted by all the other shit that's going to be going on." And there was, like, on any set, there was a lot of shit going on, like endless amounts of things that could have been a distraction. And I really took his advice very seriously. And on every set, I just did the absolute best to protect people's lives. That was the goal. That was it. And anytime there was, oh, so and so did such and such, oh, X mistake happened, my question would be, are lives being threatened? No? Then calm down. If lives are being threatened, then we have to take it. So, that was, I think Tim was kind of instructional for me in regards to uh, the focus that's required for very high stakes kinds of work like that. I will say too, though, just to continue down that road a little bit further, I didn't, as CEO of that company, I wasn't on a lot of our sets, just our biggest budget sets. So, like Amsterdam, so that's where I worked with Christian Bale and David O. Russell, and everybody, literally everybody was in that film. It was totally nuts. And then like Shazam 2, which was like $125 million or $50 million set. I really learned a lot about about the need for leadership in crisis, and the need for leadership in moments where lives are at stake. And when I say need, I mean, it's very hard to be a leader in those moments. And yet I think people really, if you're a good leader, it can build community, it can build trust, it can have such an influence on everyone's lives in a positive way. And I think elemental to that is integrity and ethics. I learned over and over in that company that every time I doubled down on our ethics, things went better. The company got bigger. It was really it was actually kind of surprising to me. I didn't really,
Integrity and ethics.
yeah, really doing the job that I had promised to do. which was to put public health first, which is not what Hollywood's mandate is, right?
Yeah, but there you were out in the front line. You founded Resilience Creative. You went on to find Resilience Creative, and you built Impact Tracker. So tell us about your company, what your company's doing now, what sparked your passion to measure emotional impact, if I'm getting that right in terms of what Impact Tracker actually does. You tell us.
Yeah, so Impact Tracker is an online platform where you enter it, we ask you questions, and we watch you watch a piece of content. We ask you, we're using we're using facial recognition software, and then we ask you questions right after. And then in the first study that we've released, we track people over time so that we can see, okay, here's the experience, the emotional experience that they've had, because we're measuring 8 different basic emotions second by second. And then we're seeing how that correlates to changes. So changes in perception. This is all climate content, right? So changes in perception of risk, perception of what causes climate change, what it is. Also behavior change. Did I, do something different? And we ask a lot of different questions depending on the content about what did that content actually result in? And again, over time, which is a very unusual thing for any kind of media impact study to look at. So a month is actually quite long. I'd love to track people for a year, 5 years or whatever, but so that's what the Impact Tracker does. And I think, again, it's like what I was saying about my research in regards to, content coming out of the research. Like, I just want to know how what I'm doing affects people.
Yeah.
And I want to know that
Yes.
I'm not like fucking up somebody's life. I want to know that I'm making somebody's life better.
Yeah.
And I want to know how, so that I can do it more next time, right? I want to like build a scientific consensus, right? I want to build our knowledge base of what really works. Yeah. So that's how why we created the Impact Tracker.
Were you ever surprised by any of the insights?
1,000%. So like,
really?
Yes. So surprised, which is always fun in science, right? When you're surprised, you're like going with these questions or hypotheses, and then it's like, what? So yeah, the biggest surprise, which is the signature of resilience, because it was such a strong signal in the data, is that there's one thing that drives increased climate conscious behavior after watching a piece of content. And so I'm leaning in. We looked at like, we looked at everything. We looked at where you're from, what your educational background is, your race, your gender, your income, we looked at everything. And the one thing is the experience of joy while watching a piece of content.
Really?
Isn't that nuts? So surprised. And so it's
wait, take a moment. Let's say that again. Say it one more time.
So the one thing that increases climate conscious behavior in terms of watching a piece of content is experiencing joy while you're watching that content.
Wow.
So a happy, the experience of joy. And when I say happy, I don't know if joy and happiness are quite the same thing, but if you can bring people joy in the context of a story about climate change, they're much more likely, statistically significant at the highest possible statistical significance. You can affect climate change dramatically.
Wow.
Dramatically.
I love that.
Yeah. So then resilience is all around creating joy. So what is joy, right? So I'm not a happiness researcher, but I can read the literature, and it's like, it's not rocket science, right? It's like building community. It's finding your goals and committing to them. It's, it's having coping skills and developing mindfulness. But how do you do that in the context of climate and a climate story? Like, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road in terms of, entertaining people, but with, an approach to storytelling that I think, based on this research, will actually create change in the world. So that's, why we take that approach.
Wow. That is fascinating.
So interesting.
That is fascinating. Right? Yeah. So for those of us who don't have biosensors and facial recognition at home, to sharpen our perception of how people are reacting to us and for us to have better impacts, what would you say, or how would you advise us the everyday people to have an impact in sharing our own story and connecting with others?
Yeah, I mean, I would just lean back heavily on what I just said about joy, and really to think about when you are communicating with your audience, how you are bringing that emotion forward in your connection with them, and how you're speaking to them, what you're sharing. So look, I don't mean this in a Pollyanna way. I'm not saying we're just going to be happy. No, that's not
Yep.
life, right? To be real about the ups and downs and the challenges and the obstacles and the need to overcome. Um, but also to think about what overcoming really looks like, feels like, and try to, support that in who you're speaking to, communicating with, connecting with. I do think that is elemental. I think that's key.
Yeah, I mean, I think the description of cultivating joy, whether that is finding community or attending to your well-being, those things do have ripple effects. And when we talk about kind of the shared, acknowledgement of reality of, the environmental challenges that we have, the scary news that we hear every day, being careful with what we consume, and just connecting with each other and making them feel less alone. I think that is the start to kind of really kind of amping up impact, just as you say. What would you tell that 8-year-old Sabrina about resilience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would I? That you will find it. I think that it is possible, and that often trauma will bring more resilience if working through it is properly supported. That it really can bring a greater resilience than any other experience. Really, the challenges and obstacles in life can make us stronger and can help us have an empathy that makes all of us together stronger. I think about that in the context of climate change and these disasters that people experience, and I do not wish them on anyone. Having said that, they bring communities together often in ways that they wouldn't have before. They make people cross, race, class, wealth, whatever kinds of lines they wouldn't have if you had asked them to, when forced. So yeah, I think resilience is found in the struggle. That's where it's found.
When you imagine a beautiful world, what do you see? What do you dream?
I don't know. I think, maybe this isn't really what I'm supposed to say, but I really think healthy relationships are at the center of it. I just feel more and more conscious all the time of how, uh, you know, people, their own mental health and well-being affects our society. And I think the way that we relate to each other, if we are treating each other with kindness and love and dignity, that really can make a world, just those interactions with one another, they can make the world so much better. And I think I see that as central, as communities that are built around that as central. I see, sustainable ecosystems and a resilient and thriving nature that we all benefit from in every way as central. But when I say sustainable, I mean, one of the things I really, is uh, really trying to work on the amount of materialism and greed we have in society, because I do think that's, especially in the West and in America, where we have way more resources than others, I do think we take it for granted. And I think it's incredibly unhealthy. It's very hard to kind of take a look at that. But I think it can, it really, if we can decrease that and focus on relationships and the happiness from relationships instead of the happiness from objects and the things we can buy and procure, and I think that's elemental as well.
Yeah, when is enough enough? It's never enough, right?
It's never enough. That's the thing. It's never enough. And I've really known some very wealthy people, and it's just never enough.
Sabrina, thank you for sharing your journey from childhood loss to climate leadership, from data to documentary, from heart to action. Your story reminds us that when we measure impact as carefully as we craft narrative, we can unlock the power to inspire real world change. I am so excited about the work you're doing, the work you've done. You are unstoppable with a few breaks in dance therapy, but whatever it takes. Thanks so much also to our listeners, the Planeteers podcast. If Sabrina's work has moved you, and I know it has, and inspired you want to learn more, go see that film. Please check out resiliencecreative.org. That is Sabrina's website. Also subscribe and leave a review for our website and share the episode. That'll let more people find out who Sabrina is and what she's working on. But until next time, keep telling stories that spark hope, build community, protect our one shared planet. I'm Beth Bannerman. Thanks for listening to the Planeteers podcast. Thanks, Sabrina.
Thanks so much, Beth. So nice to be here with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Planeteers podcast. If it meant something to you, send it to someone who'd care, or leave a review to help others find us. You can find us on Insta, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky, or at planeteerspodcast.com. Join us next time with more women creating a cooler world.